Welcome to Shop Talk Live, Fine Woodworking's biweekly podcast. I'm here with Fine Woodworking's Mike Pekovich.
Hey, man.
And Jeff Rose is manning the controls.
Hello.
What's up, Jeff?
I'm your host, Ben Strano, and yes, it is just you and I, Mike.
Just you and I.
I've been meaning to talk to you about something.
All right.
We've
Trouble.
Yeah, I know. It's like, I knew that wasn't real, but it's still.
just those words
Yes.
in that order always bring up a little something. So we're coming up on the holiday time where it's getting hard to wrangle people. And all of a sudden I realized, next week Jeff's taking off, and we need to get an episode recorded. Hey, Mike, let's do a solo show.
Okay, sure.
So I do, lately, in case people haven't figured out, I do not put questions in the order that they're asked. Or we don't answer questions in the order that they're asked.
I'm sure some people are painfully aware of that.
Or timely,
Their projects have been on hold for like a year and a half.
Yeah. But lately, I, as questions come in, I put them into folders designated with different people who I think would best answer that question. And so, if we get a question that I think Bob Van Dyke is going to have a good answer for, I throw it in the Bob Van Dyke folder.
Right.
If Barry's the guy to answer a question, goes in the Barry folder. There is a folder that's labeled Mike Solo.
Wow.
Because they're questions
no
that nobody cares about except Mike. But here we are. So this is a Mike Solo episode.
All right.
And Mike said that he has no idea because he never looks at the email box that he has access to.
Sometimes I do, but you know what? I'll read a question and I'll think, that's a good question, but it will never surface ever until like 2 years later.
Because it's in the Mike Solo box?
No, I think it's because you read things out of order.
Yeah.
Because I'll read the inbox. I'm really excited to answer those questions this week. And it's like, hey. Oh, wow.
Well, all right. We should communicate more then.
We should.
So, first off, I think we're going to use this episode as an opportunity to give away another one of your books.
Oh, cool.
Not this one. This one's mine, which I bought.
Sorry, Ben.
No, I was ordering a few because I gave one to my brother as like a birthday present that was, I don't know, like 8 months late.
That's not too bad.
So
It's 4 months early.
there we go.
Bang.
Jeff Rose got my back. And it's done two things. First off, my brother was a guy who was he liked the idea of woodworking, and he liked the idea of dabbling in it. But maybe it was like that brotherly, like, no, that's Ben's thing.
Yeah,
So like he almost didn't even want to talk to me about it.
I get that.
But every now and then he'd show some interest. And one day he was just like, I think I'm going to set up a shop in the basement. I was like, right on. He goes, it's kind of stupid, I know. I was like, it's like, no, like that's my living is guys like you setting up shop in the basement. So keep going, And so I got him your book, and it was a couple weeks afterwards. He was like, that guy Mike really knows what he's talking about. I was like, well, yeah, I mean, so the thing that spoke to him the most was the use of time and more of the working slowly but methodically and doing important things with your shop time.
Cool.
And him and I had a really good discussion about it. And these are things that I know from you because we eat lunch together every day and are forced to hang out on a podcast.
Yes.
But if anyone has a hard time getting into the shop, I think this is a great book because it's really about making the most of that time.
Yeah.
Because not everybody goes to the shop every hour or every day for an hour.
No, I don't think. I mean, what I finally realized or sort of came to the conclusion, very, very few people, including just about every pro I know, either has time to get into the shop or if they're in the shop every day, really has the time to devote to what they actually want to be doing. one of my friends is a general contractor, fantastic, really high-end work, really methodical, does a lot of, bathroom, kitchen renovations, that kind of stuff. He loves to woodwork, and one time he was like really excited because he said, so I'm working on this kitchen, I'm doing this and this and this. It's going to take like 6 months, but when it's finished, they want me to build them a kitchen table. And it's that was like the key for him. So here's someone who is a great, professional furniture maker, contractor, and he's basically waiting 6 months before he gets to get in the shop and actually do what he wants to do. So I think that's a reality of everybody, even if you're just a part-timer or a full-timer. So I tried to address that because that's important to me.
For me, you're sick of hearing it. It's getting my shop together has been a massive struggle.
Yeah.
And like this weekend.
You need to tell that story.
What story?
Ben's best friend is moving. He said, Ben, can you help me this weekend? Just move some stuff. And Ben's like, my brother's coming over to wire my shop. I will not do anything other than that.
And the best part of it was you saying, that's the equivalent of saying, my wife's having a baby that weekend.
Yes.
No, I can't help you do anything.
Exactly.
I love how these things carry the same weight in your world.
Yes.
Yeah, so I've been working, everything is run off of a 100-foot extension cord. It's, I can use my bandsaw, but the lights dim when I turn it on. And it's been a struggle.
Yeah.
But just the other night, I just went out there and decided to cut up a piece of a cherry log and just started whacking away at it with an adze. And I made this horrendous bowl.
Wow, cool.
But it was awesome to just actually do some woodworking. And I feel like all of my shop time has either been working on a project that was stressful for me, or putting my shop together, which was stressful for me.
Yes.
And it was just nice to go out there and just be like, I think I was waiting for my kid to get off the bus, and I was like, oh, here we go. I can do this real quick. And then I just started, making a bowl, and it's ugly and horrendous, and I don't have a bent gouge that I need to finish it, but I went on eBay and found one for $25,
cool.
And that's in the mail. And it was really good to spend some shop time for me. But I know that most of our audience and ourselves included, we struggle with actually having shop time that is for us.
Yeah.
So this is a good book to read if you're in that camp.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. And there was one thing, the shoe bench begets another.
Yes.
Section. I actually want you to read this section.
Okay.
This opening set of paragraphs, because I love it. I'm going to put some music under this.
Okay. Selected readings from The Why and How of Woodworking, A Simple Approach to Making Meaningful Work by Michael Pekovich. So this is a chapter. I have some up front. There's, getting the most out of shop time. There's a chapter on design, hand tools, and then it's sort of chapters based on types of furniture. So on the surface, it's projects, but really it's sort of as much a diary about how these pieces came about, not from an autobiographical sense, but just more how I'm sort of going about designing things and how, my skills and insights evolve over time. So anyway, this has to do with a shoe bench, which started out as just a really, really simple project. So it says, one shoe bench begets another. One of the most important milestones along my woodworking journey is an unassuming little piece that I built when I moved to Connecticut with my wife and infant son to begin work at Fine Woodworking magazine. At the time, I was faced with a storage dilemma. We had a TV and a VCR and a little cabinet that was too small for both to fit on. So I ran to Home Depot, grabbed a 1x12 board, cut it into 3 pieces, and joined everything together with crude protruding dovetails. The stand went on the cabinet, and the TV sat on top while the VCR was tucked underneath. And I never did glue anything together. So after its stint as a TV shelf, the piece migrated to the bathroom, where kids use it as a step to reach the faucet. It served as a shoe bench for the kids as well. When they had outgrown it, the well-traveled piece headed to the basement, where it lived next to the washing machine and served as a nice platform to set laundry baskets on. I believe at the moment it may reside under a TV in the basement once again, this time making room for a video game console. It never did get a finish either, so it ended up acquiring a, shall we say, rich patina of use. It wears its age well, though, and has seen 20 years of regular use. While I've always tried to build furniture to last a long time, this piece opened my eyes to the notion of a piece having a long, useful life as well. This basic form has inspired many case pieces that followed, and my hope is that a little of its vitality has been passed along as well.
I just love the fact that you have that thing lying around that everyone has when they start woodworking.
Yes.
I mean, you had been woodworking for a while, but it's like the lineage of that piece, and then when you look at the pieces that were inspired by it in the book,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, that just throwaway TV stand,
Yes.
really carried a lot of meaning into the future.
Exactly. We try to build great things. We want them to be perfect in terms of the way they're designed, perfect in terms of the way they're crafted. But in the end of furniture, it's a useful object. It has to kind of get used in order to earn its keep. And it's funny, a lot of times when we're deciding what to make, that's not always at the forefront of why we're making something. But in the end, I think it really determines that piece's ultimate worth. So, who knows? Sometimes those things you just knock out really quick. This thing still has that Home Depot lumber stamp on the bottom of it. And it's like, wow, that ended up, serving our family really well for a really long time. And that's kind of a cool thing about making furniture.
Were they your first protruding dovetails?
They were pretty darn close. Yeah, so basically, yes, that spawned the sticky outy dovetail look.
I sometimes miss my early woodworking because the reality, Barry and I were talking about this at lunch, the reality that Barry and I live in is that just about anything we make is probably going to be seen by the likes of you and Anissa and Matt Kenny, and it's like, it's a lot of pressure.
I remember that. I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. But I miss the days of just building something because we needed a place to put a thing.
Yeah.
And you built it, and that's what it was. And I think in these days, especially with social media, it's not only hard to just build something for the function of it and for yourself.
Yes.
Because a lot of times you're automatically sharing everything you're doing, just keeping up with Instagram. And personally, we've talked about this. I've backed off on Instagram because so much of my woodworking is public, and now I feel like I need to do it for myself, and that's why I don't post much anymore. But I think it's easy to get wrapped up in building something to impress others.
Yeah.
And I also think that it's easy to forget that at one point you built this stupid little thing to put your TV on, and it was just this throwaway item. Not everything you've done in your career has been at the level that you're working at now.
Right.
Garrett Hack did not start making the pieces he makes now.
No, he did.
Wow.
He just started. Let's pick someone else. Anyone other than Garrett.
I almost went to Tim Coleman, but he probably...
No, he did too. Never mind.
Yeah. Not everyone starts off that far down their journey.
Right.
And it's like you go on Instagram and you see all this incredible woodworking, and it looks like it should be easy to do because sometimes the people that you watch do it have been doing it for so long.
Yes.
And it is easy for them and blah, blah, blah. But not everybody's journey starts at point B.
Yes.
You
This
know?
is true. Yep.
And that's one thing in your book that you remind the reader of by telling your own story. And that's important to me, is to just keep perspective. Like everyone out there, it's like not everybody is making tens all the time.
Right. And I don't even know if that's necessarily the thing. I don't think that perfect piece. I haven't come across my perfect piece yet, so I'm still struggling away at it. I think, wouldn't that be horrible if you made something and said, "Oh my God, this is perfect," and you have to stop and like you're done, and you just like lay down the tools, lock the shop door, and never make another piece of furniture.
I mean, I'm not going to. I'm not going to say that in my previous career I had a perfect anything, but I do remember working on a record and realizing that I'm never going to be able to work on a record like that again, where I have that much fun and freedom. And it was like, oh, now it's back to this other stuff. Yeah. And like that was a turning point for me. I was like, I don't like this as much anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, in terms of perfect, I mention a term. I use the term fully realized, which sounds like a horribly pretentious thing, but what it means is, okay, you're making something, you're making a step stool or something for the TV. The idea isn't that you tart that thing up to, as high as you can get, gold leaf and inlay and marquetry. No, what does it need to do? What does it need to be in order to do what it does? So is this piece as simple as is it fully realized? Did you make this what it should be? And just as importantly, did you not try to make this more than what it should have been? Mm-hmm. That's something I always try to adhere to because I think I think it puts you on a path to eventually doing the work you want to do without trying to do too much at any given time along the way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Fully realized. All right. So you want to answer some questions?
Yeah.
All right. Mike Solo questions. This one's from Matt. I don't know why he didn't just call you. And he knows a lot about Kumiko. All right. I have 3 questions about getting into Kumiko. Number 1, what chisel would you recommend getting started with? You want to answer these one at a time?
Sure. This is a tough question. I use a kind of a Japanese chisel with a wide blade. It's a 36 millimeter blade, which is roughly 1 and 3/16 to 1.5 inch wide.
Jeff? Come on, man.
I was going to say 1 1/4, but it's bigger than that.
So the chisel I have, I forget the maker. It isn't being imported by the company that makes it.
You can't get it anymore.
Yeah, but I mean that's not important. That's the problem with Japanese chisels, is they vary in quality quite a bit. And in terms of manufacture, they're made by a whole bunch of different companies and actually individual makers in Japan. So I think what's more important than a specific brand is find yourself a tool dealer that can help you out. And a couple good sources. One is Hida Tool, Hida. So it's hidatool.com. And another one I've bought chisels from with a lot of success is, I don't know how to pronounce this, Iida Tool, IIDA. Their website is japantool-iida.com. And what's really cool is you can email the folks or give them a call and tell them what you want. Tell them what you're going to be using it for, because you don't want to buy a tool that's too inexpensive because the workmanship is going to be such that you might have to invest way too much into getting the tool up and running. So don't spend, I guess I would say, under $40, because that's probably not going to be a tool you're happy with. On the other hand, you don't need to spend $300 on up for a chisel, which you can if you just want to use it. So the people who are selling the tools, I remember when I bought my first Japanese chisel way back from Japan Woodworker, which is another good source, I wanted a fancy Japanese chisel. I thought I needed that to do good work. Mm-hmm. And I think I spoke to the owner at the time, and he said, "What are you going to be doing with the chisel?" I said, "I'm going to be using it. I'm a woodworker." He goes, are you like a professional? Are you really making a good living as a woodworker? I said, no, I do it as a hobby. Oh, buy this white Japanese chisel. And it was like not nearly as expensive as the one I wanted, but it's the one that was going to service me best. So I would say, talk to a dealer and see what they would recommend for you, because they really want to set you up with the right tool for what you're doing. So, for instance, on HidaTool.com, there's a Fuji Hero 36 millimeter chisel, which runs about $72. I don't think that's a bad deal. That's probably going to serve you well. On the other hand, on JapanWoodworker.com, they have chisels in that size as low as $36, which probably not what you want to get, as well as chisels $200 on up, which you probably don't need. Probably what you're getting with the folded steel or ebony handles aren't affecting the usability of the tool at all.
So, for the record, 36 millimeters, 1.4 inches.
Yeah, short little fatty.
Yeah. Now, Matt specifically asked about Japanese chisels, but is there anything about Japanese chisel that's going to make it better suited for Kumiko, other than like a 1.25 inch Stanley?
Use an 1.25 inch Stanley. Just get it nice and sharp. You're paring in grain, and so I'm using pine or basswood. Actually, a lot of people use a block plane instead of a chisel. I think I might be sort of an odd person out in using a chisel, but I think I like a wider chisel just because I have more bearing surface on the bevel block when I'm using it. It makes it a little bit easier to use. But any wider chisel from any maker in any country is going to be fine as long as you get it really sharp. Because pine is one of those things where, especially when you're paring end grain, that's one of the best indicators of how sharp your tool is.
Yeah.
If it's nice and glassy or really, really, really sharp, if it starts to scratch or tear out, you need to get some work done on that tool. I think that's more important than anything else.
Yeah.
Japanese tools do have a harder edge, a harder steel laminated to a softer back. And I do find for paring and such, that hard steel that edge lasts a really long time. But then again, probably like a PMV 11 from Veritas is probably going to kill it as well.
Yeah. Okay. Second part of the question is, what online or printed resources would you recommend? And besides Fine Woodworking magazine, I assume, and Michael Pekovich's The Why and How of Woodworking.
I wrote about it briefly in the magazine. I also covered it in my book fairly briefly. The first article I read that really got me going was by John Reed Fox, who had a piece on the back cover with Kumiko on some panel doors, and we had just like a little 2-page how they did it department, which wasn't really supposed to tell you how to do it. It just was sort of an overview of the process, but it was enough for me to give it a try. Desmond King, a woodworker out of Australia, has a series of books on Kumiko. They're really, really great for figuring out lots and lots and lots of different patterns and traditional ways of working and traditional tools. He has some stuff online. Someone who's doing really, really good work online is Mike Farrington. I really like his techniques. We differ a little bit in how we go about doing it, but his technique is really, really sound, and he has a really great table saw technique for doing the diamond grid or the triangular grid, which we're actually going to be doing in the magazine.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited by that. What else? Do you know anybody else online who's putting out really good information?
On Kumiko, no. I mean, my initial introduction to Kumiko was John Reed Fox on the Woodwright Shop.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
And I was scrolling through, like, the Woodwright Shop is one thing that, like, when my kid wants to kiss up, he goes like, let's watch a woodworking video. All right. And then, he'll watch for like 2 minutes, and then I'll start playing with Hot Wheels. But then I get to watch the rest of the woodworking video. But I was scrolling through the other day, and I was reminded about John Reed Fox. And that, I'm going to segue into the third part of the question, because any thoughts on preparing the strips without a table saw or drum sander? And I know that John Reed Fox uses shims on the bottom of his hand planes.
Yeah, there's a couple ways. Even if you do rip the strips with a table saw, I tend to rip them exactly to proper thickness. I would say most people that I know actually rip them slightly thicker and then plane them down. There's a couple ways to do it. One way is to sort of make a shooting board in the same way of adding, strips to the sides of your hand plane. You actually add strips to the edges of a shooting board that your hand plane rides in between at a specific height. So you put the piece down, you're able to plane it, and once the plane bottoms out on those strips along the edges, you've got your thickness of stock. Mm-hmm. And I think Mike Farrington demonstrates that online, and he has a really good system for that. So there, all you would really need, you need a bandsaw or something. You got to, I don't know if you're making these strips, I mean, you could rip them, I guess, and then like with a handsaw, and if you don't do that.
Well, what if? All right, let's riff here.
Okay, do that if you want to.
What if you could you use a cutting gauge like Steve Latta would do for Holly Inlay?
I would say no, because if you're starting with a really, really thin stock, I start with 1/2 inch thick stock and rip 1/8 inch wide strips off of it.
Okay.
I mean, you could start with 1/8 inch thick stock and then use a cutting gauge to
but then how you get to
slice
the
1/2
inch?
Yeah.
The chicken or the egg?
I think somehow you got to rip, whether with like a handsaw, you want to rip 1/8 inch strips, or bandsaw, rip them oversize. I mean, that's easy. You plane one edge, bandsaw it, put it in your little jig, take it down to size, and keep going. It's not a horrible way. You certainly don't need a drum sander. If you have a table saw, I have good luck getting it a good fit right off the blade, but a lot of people who use a table saw end up going with a hand plane anyway.
Do you have a blade that you dedicate to ripping out?
Yeah, it's a thin kerf Freud Fusion. It was really, really sharp because I typically don't like thin kerf blades. I put that in there just to increase the yield, so I would get more strips and less waste between the strips, and expecting to have to plane everything, and it came out so clean that, forget it. I'm just going to dial it in. And really that ripped cut becomes the kind of the sides of the pieces. And in a pattern, it's very difficult to see inside of it. So I don't think obviously you don't want burn marks or score marks or anything like that. But I found it's definitely a suitable surface without having to clean it up.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see. Another Kumiko question. This one's from Marty with 2 T's. I just like that. I wish I had a place I could put 2 somethings in my name.
Ben, 2 T's.
Ben with 2 B's. What is your preferred Kumiko construction that ensures trouble-free cleanup over time for quite some years and decades? And this made it in because my wife looks at Kumiko pieces and says, I don't want to dust that. Is that ever an issue?
So that was the question. How do you clean it? How do you dust Kumiko?
Yeah, because and they went on to talk about, if you used a vacuum, you might suck the pieces out because you're not gluing anything in. But come on, it really does. Nobody has more Kumiko in their house than you, so you would know.
Obviously, this is a really good question. Have I ever cleaned anything? I don't think so. Well, a lot of my doors, Kumiko traditionally is backed with rice paper, which is glued to the pattern, which will sort of keep everything locked in place. I tend to glue all my pieces in place anyway, so falling out isn't an issue. If there's no back to it, guess you could just blow it out or vacuum it a little bit. I think maybe like one of those little soft, brushy attachments to your vacuum would be good, because you kind of want to get in there, because all the dust is going to be sort of on the sides of the pieces, not on the surface. That'd be cool. Sure.
So you do glue your Kumiko pieces?
I do. Yeah.
I feel like there's this, Kumiko is one of those things that anytime it's written about or anything, it's like you don't even have to glue the pieces in. But does everyone glue them in?
I think that I'm going to say the majority of my students, because I always say, okay, let's get it all together. Once it's all together, let's pull it out square by square and put the pieces back in and glue them. And they're looking at their finished square that they just took 4 hours to make. They're like, yeah, this ain't coming apart. So I always present it as an option. I traditionally, well, no, I have seen that. I have seen videos of Japanese makers gluing each piece in with a little dab of, I think they use a rice glue. But I also think it's the type of pattern, the way the pieces are locked in place. I make the asad no ha pattern, which is sort of a traditional hemp leaf, one of the most common patterns. And all those pieces lock together if they're sized well. There's this little keystone in each square, this last little short piece, which locks everything together really, really well. And all my early pieces tended to not be glued together. And if, when it gets really dry in the wintertime, when the heat's on and they can loosen up, or if it's like a door panel that might get slammed, or especially a box top, which takes a little more jostling, I've had to go back and glue some panels that I didn't. And so I just do the one advantage to gluing all the pieces in is that then you can take that panel and rub it across a piece of sandpaper to smooth the whole surface without those pieces shifting out of place.
Could you just like use some thin CA glue, like a dab right in the center, and would it wick in?
Like after the fact?
Yeah, after it's assembled?
I think it's a good idea. I've never tried it. I would be afraid of that sort of kind of staining, creating dark areas where it's been saturated. Yeah, I would be... A lot of people recommend it, and I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea, but I've never tried it.
Okay.
And I haven't convinced any student to put some CA glue on their design afterwards.
And do you ever put any finish on a assembled Kumiko?
I don't.
block?
It's always unfinished. I think pine is a great wood to leave unfinished anyway. If I were to finish it, I would probably pre-finish the sides of the strips, say just with a really quick hit of shellac.
Oh, while they're in
Yeah, because you
length?
can't get to the sides once the panel is together.
Got you.
And then just hit the surface with a really light. I'd use a pad with shellac so it's not going to drip and run, and just hit that surface if I wanted to. Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, it's something you could do. It's not something I have done.
Okay. Probably not worth it.
I'm not going to say that. I just don't do it.
Okay.
So Toshio Date, who actually wrote a book on Kumiko as well, and taught and lectured quite a bit, and someone asked him, I think because his shoji screens he didn't put any finish on them whatsoever. And someone asked, well, how do you clean them? Like, how do you get all the dirt and grease off of them where people open and close them? And he stared at this person for a while and then said, I believe he said, Japanese people do not have dirty hands. So,
Just wash your hands.
that's one approach. Yes. So there you go. Actually, and then he would go on to explain, the notion of a patina of use, and that as a wood ages, both it's going to oxidize, and the pine or the cedar or basswood is going to, change color over time, and the wear areas on a piece of furniture are going to become darkened and polished, and the surfaces are going to basically look different after an amount of time than unused areas of the piece. And for Toshio, he thinks that's a really, really important aspect of a piece growing into itself. And that's it's only through use is a piece fully completed, fully finished. Like the finish, the woodworker starts the finish, but the finish doesn't really sort of come into its own until it gets put into use. So yeah.
He talks about that I wonder if Tom's still selling that book. Maybe I shouldn't mention it.
Art of Japanese Tools?
Yeah. No. Is that the blue one?
I think so.
Okay.
Or the purple one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's published by someone else, or I think it's available if you look for it used.
Okay.
That's a great book.
All right. Well, let's hit our all-time favorite techniques of all time for this week. And I'm going to start.
Please do.
I came up with mine through a smooth move. And I actually I haven't tried it yet, but it sounds like a really good idea, right? So I was making these urns, and to keep the lids closed, it's a sliding top.
Yes.
To keep the lids closed,
Yes.
You know the story, so you're laughing at me already. To keep the lids closed, I just installed some really powerful 3/16 inch wide, 1/8 inch thick magnets. Ordered them online. These little magnets were killer.
So the underside of the top in line with the little lip when it's closed.
Yeah.
And on
And
the top of the lip, but you never see them.
You never see it unless you open it, and you will, when you open it, you will see the magnets, but it's an urn. You're not opening it that often, probably. And it slides into place. So the magnetic strength comes from if you're pulling magnets apart, this is a lateral movement. So it's not the strongest right there. So I put one on each opposing piece on one box. And then with the other two boxes, I put two, and they were stronger and it worked better. So then I went on the first one and put two more for a total of 3 sets of magnets.
Because you couldn't just put a second one off center, because you had one center. You couldn't just go off to one side.
No, I absolutely could not, because that would not be...
Even though no one's ever going to see this.
Yeah. Well, see, I should have. Okay, so...
No, I know. This is like the first insight into the way a woodworker thinks, because we all went, oh, yeah, of course, you have to ask.
Yeah, symmetry is of the utmost importance.
Yes.
Mr. Kumiko. And so in one box I had 3, and it was just a solid connection. It was like, oh, man, that's a really satisfying clunk when everything is in place. And the other 2 had 2 magnets in them. So I decided, all right, let me go put another set in the other 2 boxes. The entire time I'm putting the other magnets in, the whole time I'm thinking, all right, don't get the polarity wrong. I mean, this whole magnet experience, I'm thinking, don't get the polarity wrong. And Jeff's looking at me. He knows exactly where this is going.
That is the whole thing to installing rare earth magnets in a piece.
Yeah, just don't screw up the polarity.
Yes.
Well, I install them, and I'm thinking, oh, these 2 are not as satisfying as the original. And like half an hour later, I'm doing something in the shop. I'm like, let me just check. And I line the lids up so that just those middle magnets are lined up. And yep, the polarity's wrong on both of them. Oh. I don't know how, but I got the polarity wrong on both of them. And that's the way they're going to stay, because they're epoxied in, and that's it. And the lids stay on fine, but...
Yes.
Okay, so I've been thinking, man, how did I screw that up? I can't. This is like the one time I'm not woodworking in front of a camera. I can't figure out how I screwed it up or where it went wrong. But I know how I would not screw it up again.
How is that? So this is your technique?
This is my technique that somebody else is going to benefit from before I do.
All right.
The magnets I was using were 3/16 of an inch wide, right?
Okay.
I have a 3/16 inch inside diameter brass tube lying around in my shop. I should have loaded the magnets up in a piece of that brass tube with a plus and a minus on either side and pushed them out with a bamboo skewer. So like a cartridge, a magnet. I expected a better reaction out of you, I think, more than you, but no?
Well, that's great. But depending on which side of the tube you push it out of, you can get backwards again.
No, on the tube you write a plus and a minus.
Okay.
And then you just poke it through with a stick on either side.
So do you stick it out of a plus side for one and then the minus side for the other?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like that.
All right.
Okay. I just got to remember, boom, one side. Wait, opposite side.
Yeah.
Did I do the plus side first or the minus side first?
Well, if you said, on the lid, I'm always going to do the minus side. On the box, I'm always going to do the plus side.
Oh, that's
something
good.
like
yes.
that.
Right.
other than that, I thought that the only way I could have not screwed that up, because, I mean, let's be honest, I was playing with fire, right? That's too many. It was a total of 18 magnets.
Yes.
The fact that I only screwed 2 of them up is pretty impressive.
Pretty good.
So the only way that I could think of not screwing that up is to just take a Sharpie and put a dot on each magnet on the positive side. But then you got to clean the Sharpie off on half of them.
Because you don't, it's just the magnet itself is sticking out.
Yeah.
I always think in terms of, I have the 2 magnets and they're stuck together. I pull them apart and I put a Sharpie dot on the mating surface of each. So I guess that'd be 1 plus 1 minus. I don't know. All I know is when I glue them in, that dot has to be facing up.
Oh, so if you organized them, like if you, what's that? Is that called kerning when you separate things out? No, not kerning. That's knolling. Whatever. If you, that's what it's called now. If you knoll them out in pairs and put a dot on each pair, then it doesn't matter if it's positive and negative. That pair is matched.
But I like your brass tube thing.
I'm going to try it.
Please do, because I think that could be really cool.
I got to order more magnets now.
Yeah, just to have that tube. Because it's like, where do you keep your magnets? I always just stick them to the side of my benchtop oscillating spindle sander because it has a metal base. And I have like all these little stalactites of magnets in different sizes, like poking off the sides of it. The brass tube. Because in the brass tube, there's still enough attraction where you can put that up against something.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
And they're not going to fall out one at a time.
Yeah.
The only thing is, is it the right diameter where they're going to sort of slide in and out well without that whole thing falling out?
That's maybe, yeah. We'll see. Well, I'm going to go home and try it. Okay. Well, no, I'm out of magnets. Crap. Again, I'll order more magnets.
All right.
K&J Magnetics.com or something like that. It's like the best website ever. All right. What's your all-time favorite technique of all time for this week?
It actually kind of has to do with chisels and a little bit with Kumiko. But the technique came about because I was making a little chest on stand, and the drawers in the chest were really, really thin pine. And this particular pine, it was quarter sawn and really brittle, almost like a cedar or something. And so the sides were only maybe like a quarter of an inch thick, maybe less, 3/16. And as I'm chiseling the waist to the baseline between the pins, the wood was really, tearing out. It tends to sort of chop out, especially softer woods in the center of the joint when you're trying to pair halfway through. And no matter what, I was just getting tons and tons of tear out, even with a freshly sharpened chisel. So I always sharpen all of my chisels at 35 degrees, and I've never really had a problem at that angle, even pairing as long as they're nice and sharp. And I thought, well, I've got a spare chisel. Let me go ahead and sharpen that to a really low angle. So it was like somewhere between 20 and 25, as low as I could get it, set it up on my Tormek. I just reground that angle really low and just sharpened it by hand. And it was amazing how even chopping, I would just get like a glass smooth surface on the end grain of that pine where it was like chipping out like crazy before. I could come in each way and 0, 0, 0 tear out whatsoever. So that was great. And now I have a chisel sharpened at a really low angle for pairing. And then when I was doing a little Kumiko pattern, and the particular pieces of pine were a little bit unruly, even for my sharp chisels, I pulled out my low angle chisel and it just sliced right through it, which of course it should. And everyone says, yeah, pairing chisels, you have lower angles. And it's just not something I paid a lot of attention to, or certainly didn't adhere to that practice. But yeah, sharpen and chisel to a really low angle for pairing end grain, and and it works really well. So this is a very non-novel technique because it's one of the foundational things about sharpening. So.
But what is the downside of sharpening all of your chisels to 25 degrees?
It just makes it more fragile if you're pounding. And obviously I work tons and tons in white oak. And I find that a 35-degree angle, it just gives me a much, much longer lasting edge. Also, if your chisels are A2 steel, A2 steel does not like low angles. I wouldn't go I might go 30 degrees. I'd probably be more comfortable at 35 degrees with an A2 steel chisel. So I think that would be an issue as well. So it's just, durability of the edge. But again, if you're only using it for paring, why not set up one or two chisels just as a paring chisel? I think that's a really cool way to go.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Dovetails and Wangi.
Cool.
It's the name of Mike's next record. Fine Woodworking's holiday sale starts November 8th. Podcast listeners can save 20% in our store on favorites like Michael Pekovich's The Why and How of Woodworking, SketchUp Guide for Woodworkers, and hundreds of project plans. Visit TauntonStore.com and use gift code 20 to stock up and save.
This February, experience the joy of hands-on learning with masterclasses in craft at Fine Woodworking's first ever hands-on event. Taking place at the Florida School of Woodwork, February 1st, this 3-day event is a unique opportunity to expand your skills through personalized instruction from a diverse group of experts. We have Michael Fortune, Kelly Parker, Peter Galbert, Mary May, Dixie Biggs, Jennifer Anderson, Michael Cullen, and Dave Fisher. Of course, there will be some social time between the days of hard work, where you'll be able to taste some regional flavors with local food trucks and locally brewed beer. But this event is really all about making and doing, all in an intimate setting. The class sizes are small. That's great for learning, but it means space is limited. So don't wait. Register now and come see us in Tampa.
All right, this next question's from Al. I'm having troubles laying out the pins and tails on a Wangi board. It's extremely hard and not at all forgiving, and the grain does not show my scribes very well. Is this why you use blue tape, or is this why you use a table saw and a router for your dovetails?
And my first question was like, how do you know I use a table saw and router for my dovetails on my Wangi T-Box? Because I didn't include that in the article, and I've never posted that on Instagram.
Is it in your book?
No,
because the T-Box is in the book.
No, it's on TV.
Oh, it's on the TV show. It's on the PBS TV show.
One ill-fated, misguided guest episode with Tom McLaughlin on Rough Cut.
Yeah.
Where we made a T-Box.
So?
That's a really uncomfortable episode in my life, but that's okay. Not the doing of it. That was really fun. Just the watching of it later.
Of you on TV?
Yeah.
Well, because it's very, like normally you just get up and talk.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that was okay. It was just sort of the camera adding 10 years of age to you. It's like, God, you look like crap, Mike.
HD's rough, man.
Yes. Anyway, so yeah. Wangi, really, really dark wood, really, really hard. I don't do the table saw for my dovetails or routing the waste between the pins on Wangi because it's dark or it's hard. I just kind of use that method. In fact, when I teach that box, I typically teach it using hand methods just because it's a small little piece and the dovetails are an important part of the joinery. So why rush through it with all this big machine setup stuff when we can just do it by hand? However, that was the very, very first time that I used blue tape on the end grain because once I scribed my pieces, with a knife from the tails to mark my pins board and pulled the tails board away, and I looked at that shiny black end grain. Nope, I see nothing here. There's no way that I can saw anywhere to a scribe line because I can't see it. So I threw the blue tape on the end grain, scribed through it, peeled away the tape from the waste areas. Boom. Great roadmap. In fact, I only used blue tape for quite a while just for when I couldn't see my scribe line and ended up using it all the time because it had some other benefits as well. So, the table saw thing is great when you're batching out dovetails. But for Wangi, it's a very, very brittle wood. So I would make sure my saw is really sharp or maybe use a Japanese saw with really fine teeth. cope it out. It actually chisels pretty well. It kind of chisels the end grain. It's almost like a hard, dark plastic, sort of like ebony. So the main thing is it tends to be brittle. It's very splintery, and be careful because the splinters will get infected really, really quickly if you get them on your hands. And blue tape on the end grain to see where you're going, I think, is a really important thing.
And your table saw method does not negate the need to scribe and transfer.
No, the scribe and transfer, that's always done by hand, which is why I still consider hand-cut dovetail, even though I'm cutting the tails with a table saw and maybe routing the waist with a router, because all the important part about how the joint fits, that's all done by hand, and that isn't just to add an extra challenge or somehow designated as a hand-cut dovetail as opposed to machine cut. It's just a really, really efficient way of doing really, really accurate joinery. So it's sort of like you do the stuff you can get away with a machine, and you do the stuff you need handwork for with hand tools. So it does save some layout. You know, if you're marking your tails out and then sawing to them and you can't quite see them, but who really cares, because you're going to be scribing your pins from wherever you cut anyway.
Yeah.
And I find like a marking gauge line, you can see that pretty easily in terms of your shoulder lines chopping to a shoulder line. I don't necessarily think you might have a problem there, although some of my students put a piece of blue tape, you know, along the baseline so that they have another visual indicator of where they're chopping to.
So they do the scribe and then blue tape to that?
Yeah, right.
Oh, okay.
I don't do that, but if it helps you out, great. That's fine.
So I'm surprised that Wenge was the first place, because I've found in oak,
Yeah.
it's difficult to read a scribe, and that might be because this is before I was using the cutting gauge that I got from Bob, where it's like that thing really puts a deep line in.
Well,
Like, yeah. But that makes it significantly easier than a wheel style gauge sometimes. But when you're on the end grain of white oak, especially if it's a darker piece, it's easier to lose sight of your scribe marks.
Absolutely. And that's sort of the second time I pulled out the blue tape. I was, cutting dovetails in a white oak case piece. And again, really hard end grain, a lot going on with the grain in the end grain to where it was hard to see what you're doing. And so I pulled the blue tape out, put it on there. I could see everything. I cut it. And I'm looking for a fit where at least partially fits off the saw, just so I have some reference of where I might need to pare. In this particular time, it just went shunk. The whole thing fit perfectly. And it's just like you write that off to luck. You know? It's like me throwing a bullseye darts. That was not skill. That was just happenstance.
Yeah. Enough monkeys, enough typewriters.
Yeah. But then sort of the second joint I cut using the blue tape, and shunk. It's like, what is going on here? And I started to think more about the blue tape. And for me, it's a couple things. The better I can see the line I'm trying to saw to, the more confident I'm going to be sawing up to that line. If there's just a scribe line on end grain and I can't see it, and that could be the scribe line, or that might be, I'm just going to saw it to the inside and pare it. So the blue tape, I think the seeing helped me be more confident sawing right to it. And also the thickness of the tape, it does give you actually a physical lip that as your saw is trying to start a kerf, and on a rip blade, those teeth are flat. So you have kind of flat teeth on a really hard, shiny surface on that end grain, and the saw can skate side to side just a bit as you're sawing before it really grabs and creates a curve. I think that's where the tape sort of helps, because it just sort of, the saw sort of maybe skates against it, stops, and you are able to start your cut right there.
Do you ever put tape, like I know you do it on the end grain when you're transferring to the pin board.
Yeah.
Do you ever come down the front with a piece of tape? And because one thing that I do like about the tape, because I'm going to be honest with you, at first I thought the tape was like kind of silly.
Oh, everybody does. I did. I wasn't even going to tell anybody I did this.
But the thing that I like about it is there is a thickness to a pencil line.
Yes.
There is no thickness to the line left by, like, it's binary. There's tape there or there is no tape there, right? So do you ever come down the front of the pin board and then take a marking knife and
Slice it down.
slice it down with a square?
I don't. Some of my students choose to do that, and I don't dissuade them from doing it because if it helps you, awesome. I just don't find, I don't personally see the need because, you just kind of saw basically straight. I use a pencil line as a rough guide for sawing straight, and then if it's a little bit off, I'll just sort of pare it a little bit straight. But it's certainly not a bad thing to do if it helps you out.
I could see it helping with the pairing more than the sawing.
Probably. I think if it helps, that's fine. And that was the other thing you mentioned about the pencil line has a width, and if you're sawing, where you're sawing. It's sort of the same way that a knife line, when you scribe a line on the end grain, that's sort of, there's a line, but it's almost a zero width. And so when I would tell students, scribe a knife line on there, saw next to this knife line, which has zero width, but don't saw into the knife line. It's like, what are you talking about? That's impossible. Where, like you said, saw next to the piece of tape. Oh, yeah, I can do that. Exactly the same thing.
Am I the only one who, as a child, used to sit there and wonder if you could cut? Well, no, because like Bugs Bunny or something, he would cut like a piece of ham so thin you could see through it. And then I thought, well, can you cut a piece of ham so thin you're not touching the other piece of ham? I'm going too far right now.
If the slice is thinner than your kerf, then I guess you're not ending up with a slice. You're just removing ham stock, without having a waste piece.
I need to stop. I think that's our cue for this episode.
It's lunchtime, I think.
All right. And here's a great YouTube comment. This one comes from Perry. So if you could only have two types of tacos, so there's a theme to all of our comments now.
Yeah.
Why would neither of them have a flat bottom shell?
Well, you got this is rough because the classic taco in California is a fish taco, and that's always on soft tortillas. I mean, and the classic street truck taco is a soft taco.
Yeah.
It has to be.
If you could only have two types of tacos, neither of them are a hard shell taco.
But like Wednesday night tacos at home, it's a crispy taco. It's a different thing. They have their own place and time. It just doesn't leave room for a third taco shell.
No.
It's a really, really good taco shell is you take a corn tortilla, you have a frying pan with oil in it, you dip the tortilla in the oil so it fries, but not so much that it gets crispy, and while it's sort of like just kind of foldable, you fold it while it's still foldable and just hang it on the rack in your oven. It's maybe set for like 250 or something. So it's this sort of leathery, chewy taco shell thing. That's the ultimate taco shell.
All right. There was another taco comment on something that mentioned taking the crispy taco shell and wrapping it in a soft taco shell so that when the crispy taco shell breaks, you still got the contents held in place by the soft taco shell.
This sounds like a Taco Bell monstrosity. Is that not like the chalupa?
Maybe.
I
don't know.
That's not a bad thing.
No, and there is a time and a place for Taco Bell.
In fact, a variation on that is you got your plate at home, you got your 3 tacos, you got a big old burrito-sized tortilla on the plate with your tacos sitting on top of that, and then all the taco detritus gets rolled up. Yeah. Boom.
All right. I'm going to end this episode with my recommendation to all of those in Nashville. Go to Harrison and Nolensville Road. Okay. Nolensville Road and Harrison Street. And go to Taco El Recuerdo number 2. And eat like 15 tacos and think of me.
And now everyone who actually goes there now is really mad at you because you just said...
no, that got out a long time ago. I used to have a recording studio right across the street.
Wow.
It was, it's the best tacos in the world. All right. Do you have a recommendation?
I think so. Don't hold me to this, but I was just like skimming through Instagram today, and there was a little paid post from Disney, which was a trailer for the new Dumbo movie, which is coming out, which is like...
It looks really good.
Which is like live action. I thought, come on. as a classic animated film. No, I mean, this is like CGI done the way it needs to be done. It looks so good.
It looks really good, and I'm gonna like get some stuff for this, but like the Nutcracker looks really good too.
Okay, I haven't seen that.
Because I kind of want to go in a theater and hear Tchaikovsky like blast from those speakers sometimes. I hope there's no talking. Whatever. All right. That went squirrely at the end. That's all for this episode of Shop Talk Live. If you have questions you'd like us to answer on the show, send them into shoptalk@taunton.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please click that thumbs up button. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Thanks for listening. We'll actually have a bonus episode 1 week after this posts.
Hi, I'm Tom McLaughlin, host of Rough Cut with Fine Woodworking, sponsored in part by Felder Group. Season 8 is now airing on PBS and brings unusual, unique design inspiration and easy-to-follow project instruction to woodworkers at every skill level. Check your local listings or visit finewoodworking.tv to watch right now.